Raglan knitting patterns that are constructed top-down in one piece have become incredibly popular over the last few decades, and for good reason. This construction can often be very approachable to knitters. It's often touted as being easy to fit because you can try it on as you work, and you end up knowing exactly how long you're going to knit because it's worked top-down. However, if you need to make any kind of adjustments or modifications, I find that raglan construction is actually one of the hardest to work with. There is a lot that goes into designing a successful and beautifully fitting raglan knitting pattern. Today we're going to go over raglan construction, its basics, what it is, how we can make adjustments, and some of the common problems that we run into when knitting a raglan. So if you'd like to learn more about raglan construction in knitting, keep watching. My name is Amy Scher, and you are watching another episode of the Thoughtfully Made Fiber Vlogcast. As I said into the intro, this is going to be an overview video talking all about the different dimensions that make up a raglan knitting pattern. Personally, I really love knitting and wearing raglans. I find them to be very casual and very easy to knit and so fun. However, as the market has expanded and we're talking more about size inclusivity, I find that a lot of my customers and knitters are seeking something a little bit different from what many designers offer, and just because a pattern is labeled size inclusive on the surface does not mean that it truly is size inclusive. So hopefully with this video, we'll go over some of the things that make raglan construction work, what might be a problem when you're encountering a raglan pattern. Hopefully by watching this video, you will learn a little bit about raglan construction, the different dimensions, and things to watch out for when you're selecting pattern. Additionally, I'll offer a few pointers on modifications that are quite common amongst my customers and test knitters that you might want to explore. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So I've gone ahead and zoomed out a little bit so you can see what's going on here with this raglan pullover. So at its very core, raglan construction, as you might know, is divided into 4 pieces. There is the front, there is the back, and then there's the 2 sides. So in most patterns, you will be increasing on either side of each piece all the way around. So because there's 4 sections, you'll be increasing 8 stitches at a time every time you have an increased row. And in the majority of knitting patterns on the market, you'll be doing this every other row. Additionally, another hallmark of a raglan knitting pattern is that they should always have some back and forth shaping right at the top of the pattern. Whether it be working back and forth flat to shape the neck, or whether it be short rows using German short rows or another style of short rows after the ribbing, this is a must for good fit because our bodies are not symmetrical front and back. Our necks do not come straight out of our torso up and down. As you can see here on the dress form, the neck actually slopes front, angling front towards the front of the body. Without proper shaping, this means that the raglan will be all the way up on your neck and be very uncomfortable. The sweater shown here is with a V-neck construction, which is another variation. In this case, you are asked to work back and forth, working all the increases until you reach this point, and then you'll join to work together to work in the round for the remainder. Of course, there's all kinds of different ways to construct the raglan. You can work it in the round, bottom up. You can work it in pieces and seam together. I've even seen quite a few interesting patterns where you construct it in the round from the bottom up, and then once you reach the armpits, you split for the front and the back, and then you work the remainder in pieces. Then the sleeve is constructed separately and you seam only along the raglan lines. There's pros and cons to every approach, so it's a good idea to get familiar with all of them. Probably the biggest positive point of having a top-down construction like this is that you can try it on as you're working. If you are new to knitting garments and you're unfamiliar with assessing schematics and shapes to understand which size is best for you or how long to knit a thing, this is a huge plus. However, the top-down construction in the round can be quite limited. Because there's no seams and because there's so many increases happening throughout the body, and there's not a lot of structure. In the upper sizes, this can sometimes, as the sizing gets bigger, there's not as much structure to hold up the entire garment. This is why across all my patterns, I really recommend knitting with either fingering weight yarn or with another lightweight alternative such as a woolen spun or unspun yarn if you're using a chunky weight pattern. The other limitation is that it can get a little grody here in the armpit. Many designers will just have you increase every other row all the way down until they reach the circumference desired. And this is going to be a problem because a person with a 60-inch circumference, chest circumference, will not have double the arm size compared to a person with a 30-inch body circumference. So what this means that in the larger sizes, we often need fewer increases in the sleeve and more increases in the body, which means that we can't just be increasing on every corner all the way around all the time to reach the desired circumference. The other problem with this is that the neck circumference and back of neck measurement does not vary that much from size to size, from the smallest to the largest size. And that means when we're increasing from this relatively small section all the way out to a larger sized body, we'll end up needing a ton of rows to get to the full width that you need. And if you're working only every other row, that's just not gonna do it. You're gonna end up with the armhole like all the way down here in the waist. And I see this over and over again in some very popular designs, and this is just not it. And many of my knitters have expressed frustration with this kind of grading. So if this is a common problem for you, or if the graded ease of a garment has too much or too little armhole depth, you will need to be lengthening or shortening the armhole depth to your preferred liking. But how do we do that? How do we determine what armhole depth is right? So frustratingly, many different designers, including myself, calculate armholes in hugely different ways. For example, in my first Raglan pattern, I calculated it a different way than I do in my more recent patterns. And as I grow and improve, I have a new standard. So let's go over how you can determine what the armhole depth is, exactly what measurement that is, how we're gonna measure for it, as well as how it's calculated in a Raglan. Armhole depth is a straight measurement measured with a straight ruler and not a measuring tape. It is not curved. And it measures the distance between the top of the shoulder and the start of the armpit. On me, it'll look something like this. From here, because our arms are not static and we use them and move them all throughout the day, you'll be the most comfortable with at least 1 inch ease in the underarm. Because we move around and we don't hold our arms still on our sides, throughout the day, we will be moving our arms. They'll be placed in different positions. I find that in a positive ease garment, you'll be the most comfortable if there's at least 1 inch ease in the underarm area. The other thing to take into consideration is that there's a slope in the shoulder for most people. In the standard size chart, from the side of the neck to the shoulder tip, it's about 1.6 inches of slope. That means vertically, it drops 1.6 inches from the neck to the edge of the shoulder like that. So because Raglan construction doesn't really have shoulder shaping because the sleeve piece is all the way up here in the shoulder, this means that the Raglan depth will need to accommodate both the shoulder slope and the armhole. So by adding your armhole measurement and the shoulder slope together, you will have a better understanding of how much ease is in each pattern. The other thing that can be a little bit tricky about Raglan construction is how to calculate for the armhole in the pattern. So when I first started designing Raglans, I calculated the Raglan depth from here, where the Raglan line is in the cast on, down to where the body split is. And you can see pretty clearly on this pattern that actually the shoulder does not start where the Raglan line is. It's actually gonna be halfway into the sleeve where you get the top of the shoulder. So to calculate your Raglan depth, you're gonna take half of these stitches from the shoulder. You're either gonna measure that, or you're gonna have to calculate it by the number of stitches in the sleeve cast on, divided by 2 for the half of the sleeve, because the other half is on the back, and then divided by your stitch gauge per inch. And that way you'll get an accurate measure of how wide this area will be. Then you will add this dimension to the Raglan depth, or how many rows and rounds it takes to get to the sleeve split, and add those together. And that is how you will get your Raglan depth. To summarize, the equation I use to work out the Raglan depth is half of the shoulder stitches in inches plus the rows it takes to complete the Raglan and split for sleeves equals wearing ease plus armhole depth plus shoulder slope. By understanding what these measurements mean and how they interact with each other, you'll have a better idea of how to work with every single pattern, even if they do not list a Raglan depth. The other thing that you need to know about this measurement is that if you're calculating it with any kind of short rows, you need to include the depth of the rows into your calculations, because the shoulder starts over here and any short rows that you work are going to be under that. The Hibernate pullover is currently in testing, and we ran into a really interesting little problem. I originally designed the sweater to have a single color throughout. However, I included modification notes and yardage so you can create this beautiful color block version that's very trendy right now and customize it to your own liking. Here we ran into a problem. In the pattern, I write that the first color changes, for example, 7.5 inches from the top of the garment, and it turned out that it was not obvious at all where to measure for this. Many knitters thought that they would be measuring from this point, the top of the raglan line, all the way down, but this is not how we measure garments. So to measure the total garment length in any raglan pattern, you'll start at the shoulder, halfway into the sleeve piece, and you will be bringing that measuring tape all the way down to get to where that first color change will be. This is also useful if you want to know the total pattern length. So when a pattern tells you to knit until the garment measures 21 inches, this is exactly what they mean, from halfway into the sleeve all the way down to the hem. Armed with this information, you can take the measurement of the total garment length from any piece of garment you want. Store-bought sweaters, store-bought shirts, button-down shirts, whatever you want, as long as you start from the shoulder seam if there is one, all the way to the hem, and you match it up with your raglan measurements. Armed with this information, you'll know exactly how much you want to add or remove in the body if you're working a bottom-up raglan, and you have to make that decision before you join for the raglan section. The other thing to watch out for is that raglans often benefit from a compound raglan construction where the increases are more frequent at the top, where the neck becomes the shoulders rather quickly, and also at the bottom where the upper bust becomes the full bust also rather quickly. Most raglan patterns do not have this feature, but you can add it in yourself, or look for a pattern that specifically has compound raglan shaping in it. I will create a little page for all the compound raglan patterns in my collection and put it in the description box below. So for those of you who want to deep dive more into this topic, I have written 2 blogs all about raglan fit adjustments. First is all about widths, how to change for a wider front of full bust or full bicep, things like that, to help you figure out the best place to add extra stitches so that you can accommodate your body. The second blog is all about lengthening and shortening the raglan line and the best places to do that to attain a really beautiful shape and kind of mimic that compound raglan shaping. I will link both of these articles in the description box below and hope that you find them really helpful. If you have any questions about raglan construction and about wearing ease in any of these dimensions, please do drop them in the comments below, and I'll try my best to either answer in a reply or make a new video about it. This video was a little bit denser and a little bit more technical than my usual, but I wanted to create this resource for you so that you can have it to reference for the future. I hope that it was helpful for you, and if you want to see more videos like this, or you like the format or you didn't enjoy it, please also tell me about it in the comments below. If you found this video useful, I would very much appreciate it if you can give it a like and subscribe to my channel so that you can see more videos like this. Once again, I've put all my raglan patterns into a page in the description box, and I really hope that you enjoy exploring them and you find something that you like amongst them. Thank you so much for watching today. My name is Amy Scher, and I hope to see you soon.